Have you ever heard a story about a failure that turned into one of the greatest successes in history? Well, today we're diving into exactly that. It's the incredible story of the Endurance and how 28 men, stranded for almost 2 years in the most brutal place on the planet, all made it out alive.
I mean, really think about that. How is that even possible? Their ship was gone. They had zero communication with the outside world, and they were staring down a savage Antarctic winter. Their survival, as we'll see, came down to more than just luck. It came down to the absolute will of their leader.
So here's a quick look at their journey. It all kicked off in 1914 with this huge, ambitious goal. But as you can see, things went wrong fast. And it all wrapped up 2 years later with a rescue that, honestly, sounds like something out of a movie.
All right, so let's set the stage. Why were they even down there? This was the tail end of what they called the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, and there was one last great prize that nobody had claimed yet.
The man in charge was the one and only Sir Ernest Shackleton, a guy who already knew the Antarctic pretty well. His goal? Oh, it was just unbelievably ambitious. To be the very first person to walk from one side of the frozen continent to the other. The official name for it was the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition.
Now, to even try something like this, you need a ship that's up to the task. And they had one. The Endurance was an absolute beast of a vessel, built from super thick American oak. Her hull was specifically designed to handle the crushing pressure of polar ice. Plus, she had both a steam engine and sails. This ship was supposed to be their lifeline, their home base in the middle of nowhere.
So the expedition headed south, full of hope. But if there's one thing you can say about Antarctica, it's that it doesn't play by the rules. And once they got into the Weddell Sea, their grand plan came to a complete, and I mean complete, stop.
Get this, on January 18th, 1915, they were just 130 kilometers away from where they planned to land. So close, but the Weddell Sea is famous for its thick, unpredictable pack ice. And just like that, the ice closed in around the Endurance like a fist and refused to let go. They were totally and completely stuck.
For the next 9 months, there was nothing they could do. The men were just passengers on a giant, frozen raft, drifting wherever the ice took them. Their ship went from being a mode of transport to a floating prison. So they settled in for the long winter, just hoping the ice would eventually break up in the spring.
But the spring thaw never came. Instead, the ice pressure just got worse and worse. The crew could hear the ship's massive timbers groaning and cracking day and night, until, on October 27th, the ice won. The hull was breached, and Shackleton gave the heartbreaking order, abandon ship. Their one link to the outside world was gone, slowly crushed and swallowed by the ice.
Okay, so now their situation is beyond desperate. You've got 28 men and a pack of sled dogs, literally castaways on a floating piece of ice, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers from the nearest land. What do you even do?
This is where you really see Shackleton's brilliance. He knew that if his men had nothing to do, they'd lose hope. So he created this incredibly strict routine. There were hunting parties to get seals and penguins for food, chores caring for the 50 sled dogs, and he even had them play soccer matches on the ice. This wasn't just about keeping them alive physically, it was about keeping them sane. And just remember, they were doing all of this in the most punishing conditions imaginable. Temperatures would drop to minus 20 degrees Celsius on a regular basis. All they had for shelter were flimsy tents against those non-stop Antarctic winds. It's just brutal to even think about.
So, after 5 long months living on this ice floe, which they appropriately named Patience Camp, the ice started breaking up right underneath their feet. Their only way out? 3 small lifeboats they'd managed to save from the Endurance. What followed was a terrifying 7-day journey through icy, storm-filled waters. They finally made it to a desolate spit of land called Elephant Island, the first time any of them had stood on solid ground in 497 days.
But here's the thing about Elephant Island. It was a death trap. Just a barren rock, miles from any shipping route. No one was coming to find them there. Shackleton realized their only chance was to attempt a rescue mission that was, for all intents and purposes, a suicide mission.
So Shackleton makes this just mind-boggling decision. He's going to take 5 of his toughest men, get in their best lifeboat, the James Caird, which is only 7 meters long, by the way, and sail 1,300 kilometers across the Drake Passage. That's the most dangerous stretch of water on the entire planet. Their target, a tiny whaling station on South Georgia Island.
I mean, look at this. The goal was simple: get to that whaling station. But the obstacles were just insane. They were up against hurricane-strength winds and waves as tall as buildings, all in a little open boat. To find their way, they had a single sextant, and they had to hope for a quick peek at the sun between storms to even know which way they were going.
And against every single odd, after 16 days, they actually saw land. They did it. But not quite. Just as they approached, a massive storm blew in and nearly smashed them to bits on the cliffs. They were forced to land on the southern coast of the island, the completely uninhabited side. Their rescue at the whaling station was now blocked by a massive uncharted mountain range covered in glaciers.
So they'd survived the unsurvivable journey across the ocean. You'd think that would be enough, right? Nope. There was still one more impossible task ahead of them if they were going to save the 22 men they'd left behind.
The other men in the boat were just too weak, so Shackleton and 2 others had to go on alone, on foot. They hammered screws from the boat into their boots to get some grip on the ice, and with barely any gear, they started climbing. For 36 hours straight, they trekked non-stop over mountains and glaciers that no human had ever crossed before.
And then, looking like ghosts, they literally staggered into the whaling station. They had made it. It took another 3 months of trying, but on August 30th, 1916, Shackleton finally got a ship back through the ice to Elephant Island, and he found all 22 of his men alive and waiting. In the end, after everything they went through, not one single person was lost.
And the story doesn't even end there. There's this amazing final chapter. In 2022, an expedition went looking for the wreck of the Endurance, and they found her, sitting perfectly upright 3,000 meters down at the bottom of the Weddell Sea. She was so well preserved by the cold, dark water that you can still read her name right there on the stern.
Which really brings us to this final thought, right? If you just look at the original mission, the expedition was a total failure. They never crossed Antarctica. But nobody remembers it that way. Shackleton's story is remembered for the goal he did achieve. He brought every last one of his men home, and that's his real victory, a testament to unbelievable leadership and the sheer, stubborn endurance of the human spirit.